Hi, it's Corrine. Thanks so much for stopping by and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm working on another Smashbook page. I'm so enjoying working in my Smashbook again. And I'm scrapping a photo of myself and my husband. I'm using the large red Smashbook, and I do have a full playlist on my channel if you're interested in all my Smashbook videos start to finish. So just check the channel out for that. So for this page, I'm going to use the very first page in the book, this darker page, and I knew that ahead of time. I added a piece of chipboard or cardboard behind the page just to give me a little bit more stability when I worked. And I printed this black and white photo out just using my Canon Pixma printer. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out all the pieces of ephemera and papers that I have. I'm using Felicity Jane, the Reagan collection, I believe. I have a couple pieces mixed in there because I just have scraps left over, and I'm using both the physical paper pack and also the digital paper pack. So some of these ephemera pieces I've cut with my Silhouette Cameo, like this little star here. And I'm just gluing all of these pieces with another piece of cardstock behind it because I like a little stability to my ephemera pieces. Some of them are from the physical paper pack, but here I cut out two different journaling pockets. I wasn't sure which size I wanted to use. I cut out a little bit smaller and then a larger one, and I end up going with the smaller one. So for this flower cluster, I wanted it to have a little bit more dimension to it. So I'm gluing on two pieces of matching cardstock to underneath, and that'll give me just enough dimension to it. Super pretty. It's from the Henley collection. I'm sorry about that. I'll be sure to link that down in the description box. So here I have some little file folders from Felicity Jane. I end up not using those, but I did pull them out because I thought maybe I would use one on the page. So I'm pulling out all the different pieces of paper that I have left over from the collection. I love using up collections, especially when I love the collection. I love all Felicity Jane collections. So I have a lot of little scraps here. Pretty much after this page, I've used up most of my scraps. I wasn't sure if I was going to use that floral paper or the striped paper. I ended up going with that note journaling paper, which you'll see here in a minute. And I did pull out the La La Land Crafts Stitched Bow Die 3. That's my favorite bow die. So these pages are 13 by 9 3/4. So I was trying to decide what I wanted to do. I really love that floral paper. I really wanted to use it, but it was a little too busy for the background. So I decided on this journaling paper, which I absolutely love. But that was cut to, or that was, what I had was 9 3/4 by I believe 10. So I decided I'm just going to go ahead and cut down my page. I do this a lot in my Smashbooks. I love cutting them down. I love making pockets out of them. Now they came out with pockets and envelopes in the Smashbooks, but I love doing that, just customizing them to what you want. So I'm putting a cutting mat underneath it, getting out my Tim Holtz ruler and just a craft knife or a box knife. I used a pencil to mark off where I wanted it. And now I'm just going to cut through it several times. I'm doing it lightly until it goes all the way through. And then I'll just trim up the excess with my scissors, like you'll see here in just a moment. Then I'll do the exact same thing to the other side. I'm just, like I said, going very lightly until I get through all the layers. I do have to trim this one up a little bit more with my scissors, but it turned out perfect in the end. And having that chipboard behind it just kind of ensured that I didn't cut into the front of my book. I do like to leave the covers on my smash books until I'm completely done, just to keep them clean. So I erased any pencil lines that were still showing, and I'm going to go ahead and adhere this piece down, but I decided I wanted it to be a little bit, you'll see here in just a moment, a little bit more stable, a little bit thicker. So I add this pattern paper to a piece of cardstock and then adhere that down to the page. That way, if I have heavier elements on it or my photo, it's a little bit more sturdy as you're turning through the book. So I'm using a piece of basil cardstock, my double-sided tape, and I'll adhere that down together. I'm just releasing one piece of the backing paper to get it where I want on that white cardstock, and then once I was happy with that it was lined up, I'm removing the rest of the release paper and adhering it all together. Same thing with on the page here itself. It allows you that time to move it around to get it exactly where you want. I'm pulling out my scoreboard. I am scoring both of these pockets because, like I mentioned, I wasn't sure if I wanted to use the larger one or the smaller one. I do end up going with the smaller one, but I scored both of them here just so I can test it out on my page and see what I liked best. The other one that I don't use, I put in a little bin that I save for other either mini albums or other smash book pages, any other projects I'm working on. So I'm folding those over, giving those a good crease with my bone folder. And I had envisioned putting these directly onto my smash book page, but I end up adding a backing to it with just some white cardstock. I also have two little journaling cards that I planned on putting in there, but I only end up using the one. So this photo is 3 3/4, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. As I mentioned, I printed that out from my Canon Pixma M512, I believe it is, printer. It's okay for colored printers, color photos rather, but it looks best to me with black and white photos. Otherwise, I just get them printed out from like Snapfish or my local Walgreens. So for that photo, I cut out a piece of black cardstock behind it. Chipboard rather. And that way it gave it the stability, but it also set it up because that pocket's a little bit thick and I knew it was going to overlay the pocket slightly. But you'll see here I go with a larger piece of chipboard in just a minute because I really like the black outline on it. So I wanted to break up that journaling paper slightly with another piece of paper, and I really like this scrap piece that I have here. So I will cut that down, and I actually use two pieces. I use this along with more of a solid piece. So I'm not measuring this besides getting it to the same height as that paper, which is 9 3/4, and cutting that down to be the same height. That way it all matches nicely. Here's where I decided I really like the black chipboard, the look of the matting on it. So I'm just going to add that on top. And then this little heart pattern paper. I love Felicity Jane papers. I love how all their collections tend to go really well with each other. So I'm going to lay this down again, cutting it to the same height. I believe, let me look here. I cut it to, about 5.5 inches wide. And then I'm just going to tuck in that pattern paper on either side of it, just cutting that down slightly. So I think those are about 1.5 inches each. Still trying to decide which pocket that I wanted to use for it. So all those ephemera pieces, if I didn't mention, I did back them with cardstock. I like doing that just to give them some stability. These black hearts I cut from black cardstock, those I have not doubled. That's what the white hearts are for, is to go behind those black pieces to give them more dimension. I don't do that with all of them. Some of them I glue directly onto the paper. So I'm just kind of laying everything out so I can see what I want to use, what I don't want to use. I cut 3 different bows from the pattern paper, 2 from the pattern paper rather, and then 1 from the solid cardstock from the Henley collection. And I'm using my bone folder to just kind of break up the fibers in that and glue those bows together. That way those can be drying while I'm working on the rest of my page. I'm using those little clamps from the Dollar Tree. I love using those. I just grab a bunch of them, make usually several bows, and set those aside to dry. I'll go back and add the tails to the bows in a moment here. So I had decided that I wanted to use the smaller pocket, so I'm just using my bone folder, creasing that down, giving that a nice crease. And here I'll decide I need a backing piece to it. I have that little library card to go inside of it. It's so cute. I also have that other journaling card, but in the end, I don't use anything with that pink in it because I just didn't think that it went well. So you'll see me cover up that pink journaling card on the left as well and not use that journaling card that I was putting in the pocket. So I'm pulling out a scrap piece of white cardstock, measuring it, and just quickly trimming that down to go behind my pocket to actually make it a pocket. And once I was happy with that, I just used a little bit of glue. I'm using some art glitter glue in a fine tip bottle. And then I'll set that aside to dry. I do add some baker's twine. I'm using some American Crafts in the cream color, going around that several times and then tying that into a bow. I also go back and add another bow to kind of cinch it together. I wanted it to look as it's pulled together. It turned out really cute. In order to get a good bow on that, I'm using my reverse tweezers to just kind of hold it in place while I tie it. And then I'll trim up the ends here as well on that. I love the texture that brings to the paper. So here's where I add that other little bow, and like I said, it just kind of cinches it off to the right a little bit, pulls it all together. I may have mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm not sure, but just in case I did not, I have a playlist of all my Smashbooks videos. I do process videos for all of them. I have that on my channel if you're interested to see the process of all the different Smashbooks, how they came together. So again, here's where I'm adding the tails, and I'll just clamp those down, let those dry. I love using bows on my pages. On this page, I end up using 2 of them. I'll save the third one for something else. And I was determined to get that little journaling card to work, but in the end, I did not like the pink on it, so I'll fix that at the end. So I decided I was ready to adhere down my main piece, so I'm just adding some ATG, and I will put down my matting piece against it, just kind of eyeballing it to see where I liked how much of that pink stood out. And now I want to use something a little bit sturdier, so I'm using some double-sided adhesive and adhering that down. I'm adhering just the bottom at this point. Once I was happy with how it was positioned, I'm going to remove the backing from the rest of the tape and place that down. I'm adding a little wet glue in the center as well. You'll see I'm not shy with my glue. I want to make sure everything stays put. For this photo, I went ahead and used double-sided tape just because I've used wet glue before and it adheres well, but if you get any on your fingers and then touch the photo, it makes such a mess. So I'm trying to avoid doing that by just using some double-sided adhesive. I like using my Tim Holtz paper piercer to remove the backing. It really helps to make it super easy. So now I'm just going to kind of lay things around the page, see what I like, and see what I want to add onto the page. I did cut those from the solid colored cardstock with an EK Success punch. I did back it with another one, and I'm going to just glue that to the top of my photo mat there. For this, I'll use some wet glue. And here's where I pulled out a blue journaling card instead. Again, I had planned on using that pink throughout the rest of the page, so I still let a little part of that show, but I'll cover that up here soon. So I was really liking how this page turned out. I did decide that I needed something else to break up that pattern paper right above the photo, so I'll pull out another journaling card here, which will kind of break that up for me, which I was much happier with. Again, using some wet adhesive to lay down the journaling card or journaling pocket. All of these little banners and labels are from the Felicity Jane collection as well. Same with this little journaling card. I wanted to use it for the pattern on it, so I just cut it off so I could tuck it under there, and I'll add a little bit of glue to adhere it down. And I like that so much better than the gap it had before it. I'm just going to add a little bow to the top of that tag using some baker's twine. And I really liked how the black popped on this, so that's why I'm adding in the black hearts, just to tie in the black to the page. I'm adhering that photo mat down. It's like I mentioned earlier, it's on a piece of chipboard, so it gives it some nice dimension. I do have to tuck a little piece of chipboard behind this circle punch here that says you and me, just to make sure it's leveled out. I'm not sure, I don't believe I did that on camera, but I went back and added a small little piece of chipboard behind it. That's a super cute little ticket there. And then I just kind of tuck in the flowers from that match the cluster up at the top. I tuck one in there and then one by the journaling pocket. And then these 3 little clusters I will adhere down and tuck slightly under the photo mat as well. I like using my reverse tweezers when you kind of need that extra hand when you're trying to glue things. They work out really well. So I decided to add a little bow to the top of my little pull-out journaling card. I'll set that aside to dry since it did have a hole in it. I didn't want it to accidentally get adhered down to my pocket. And then I'm just going to scatter a few of the hearts around, again tying in that black. A couple of them I did want a little more dimension to them, so I backed them on the white cardstock, and then the other ones I glued directly down to the paper. Smashbooks are so much fun to work out of. I feel like they're a little bit freer than your traditional scrapbook or 12 by 12 or 8.5 by 11, whatever you like to do. I feel like they're just a little bit, you can just kind of throw in pieces that you enjoy. You can throw in any type of memorabilia, whatever you like working with and looking at and you enjoy the process of is what it's all about. I've also made my own smashbooks in the past, which are really fun to do. So here is where I just decided that pink was not working for me. So instead I'm going to tie in a little bit more of the yellow. By doing that, I'm just going to cut that off with my scissors. I do have to pull out my Tim Holtz scissors because it's a little bit thicker and a little bit better precision there. So once I do that, I can just kind of tuck that scallop piece. I used for some reason it didn't film that, but I used I believe it's an EK Success scallop edge punch on that pattern paper. And then I wanted to tuck in a heart there, so I just cut the edge of it off. And now I'm simply adding some white enamel dots to both of the bow centers and one other tucked up at the top there. Once that art glitter glue dries, it really will adhere well. So I just kind of let that dry. That's all there was to it. I do have another video following at the end of this if you're interested. And like I mentioned, check out the playlist of Smashbook. I also have mini albums, cards, lots of DIY projects. So thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you've enjoyed the process. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comment down below. I hope you'll consider giving me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching and have a great day.